Hello and welcome to today's Kendo UI online keynote. We're really pleased you've taken time out of your day to join us to learn a lot about what we're doing with Kendo UI, and we've got some really fun things to share with you. So as you're streaming in and filling up the online keynote venue, let me share a few details with you, some logistics. Of course, we're giving away a lot of great prizes today, everything from a MacBook Pro with a Retina screen, iPhones and Galaxy S5s, as well as 4 $500 Amazon gift cards, and 75 Kendo UI Professional and UI with server wrapper licenses. Some great prizes here today, which of course you're eligible for just by being here and part of today's live event. And if you want to know who the winners are, we'll be announcing all of those within 24 hours of today's live event. So follow us on Twitter at Telerik or at Kendo UI and check the blogs to find out who the winners are, and good luck to you all in winning the prizes. Now, my name is Todd Englund, and if I've not met you before at an event or on another online keynote, thank you for coming again, and good to meet you. I'm EVP for Product Strategy here at Telerik, and if you want to follow me online or ask questions after today's event, you can do so by finding me at Todd Englund on Twitter. Today, we really want to talk to you about a few important things with Kendo UI. Most importantly, a major change to how we're giving Kendo UI to the open source community, as well as talking about what's new in one of the latest Kendo UI releases that shipped in March. Lots of new things, both in the new Kendo UI Core open source distribution, as well as new in our newly named Kendo UI Professional features across the board, which will make all of your application development more powerful. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to set the stage for really how far Kendo UI has come to really make it clear what we're doing today, the significance of what we're doing today. When we started Kendo UI about 3 years ago now, we set out with a mission to create everything you need to build sites and mobile apps with HTML and JavaScript. We saw a world where to build any kind of application, you had to assemble tens, if not many, many more JavaScript libraries, and then manage on your own all the interdependencies, the versions, the compatibility challenges. All of that was necessary to do any kind of application development with JavaScript. And we knew there needed to be a better way for professional developers to sit down and build high-quality apps. So we replaced all of this with this, a single library, versioned with a roadmap, and of course with professional support that you can count on in your applications to be there with the features you need and to evolve as your application evolves with the tools and the features you want. Since introducing Kendo UI, it's been a massive success. Tons of adoption across the board, both for internal and external projects, shows up in all kinds of places, some of which continue to please and surprise us as we see them. It's also been downloaded over 500,000 times since being introduced, and that doesn't even begin to touch all of the times it's been accessed and used via the Kendo UI CDN. So massively popular. We couldn't be more pleased with how Kendo UI has been received by you, our customers, and our community, and we can't wait to see where it goes next. In fact, other examples of where we're really excited to see Kendo UI today, every Chrome OS device out there ships with an app called Chrome Camera, which is built using Kendo UI. So if you have a Chrome OS device or a Chromebook, open it up, check out Chrome Camera. There's Kendo UI as well. And we spent a lot of time via the Kendo UI labs working to integrate with other very popular and important JavaScript projects to you, the developer community. Things like AngularJS, Breeze, Polymer, all of these things that you find useful in your projects. We want to ensure you can work with those very easily with Kendo UI as well. We've spent a lot of time doing that. And I'm also pleased to share that one of our friends over at Falafel Software has produced a new book to help you learn Kendo UI even more easily, Kendo UI Nuts and Bolts, step-by-step training. If you prefer to learn that way, it's available now, bit.ly/Kendo UI book. Check it out if you're looking for one more opportunity to learn everything about how to get started and be successful with Kendo UI. And before I turn it over to our MC for the day to really dive deep on what is going on with Kendo UI open source and with all the new things in Kendo UI, I want to briefly mention the Telerik platform. We introduced this in January, and we really set out to create for you a platform that would help you go from idea to device using the power of the cloud. So you could build these cross-platform mobile applications without all the headaches and complexities traditionally associated with setting up different SDKs, different environments, and all of those things that just slowed you down from getting that idea or that design out onto a device to test it, connect it to your data, and eventually deploy it to your users. The Telerik platform is continuing to evolve very quickly. Lots of new things always being added. In fact, brand new betas right now for the app prototyper and the app manager features of the Telerik platform. I encourage you to check those out. But it also has powerful tools for the Kendo UI developer, particularly within App Builder. If you're using Kendo UI and Kendo UI Mobile, there are templates built directly into App Builder and a very powerful drag-and-drop design experience that lets you use Kendo UI Mobile to quickly lay out your screens and design screens in a functional way within App Builder as you're building your mobile apps. So don't miss that part of the platform. If you've not been there or not been there recently, check it out, platform.telerik.com. Lots of great things there for developers building mobile apps, including hybrid apps with Kendo UI. What we're really here today to talk about, of course, is what is new in Kendo UI and what is this Kendo UI core and open source announcement all about. So to be your MC for the rest of today's webcast, I invite to the keynote stage Brandon Satrom, Director of Product Management at Telerik, to take you through the rest of today's announcements and to introduce our other demoers and speakers today. So Brandon, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Todd. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you again so much for joining us for this special online Telerik Kendo UI event. Now, over the course of the next hour, we're going to look at the latest and greatest features in Kendo UI, in addition to providing a hands-on overview of Kendo UI for those of you who are taking your first look. But before we get into the demos, I want to talk about the three big ideas that have been driving our development of Kendo UI over the last several months. They are experiences over devices, powerful tools for developers, and an open Kendo UI for all types of apps. And you'll see each of these ideas surface over the course of our event today, so I wanted to take a brief look at what each of these mean and explain why they're important. Now, the modern web is becoming less about devices and more about experiences, right? So for end users, web apps are about experiences that feel natural, comfortable, and consistent. Regardless of the device on which they're accessed, users expect that apps behave in a way that feels tailored to that device, while also invoking familiar elements that are unique to the app itself. And this idea has been a part of the DNA of Kendo UI from almost the beginning and has led us down the path of creating Kendo UI Mobile for mobile, web, and hybrid apps, making all of our UI widgets responsive out of the box, and so much more. And the culmination of this idea can be found in our latest release, where we've broken down the walls between Kendo UI Mobile and web, making it easier than ever for you to build great experiences across devices without having to lock yourself into a mobile-only or desktop-only approach. Now, the next idea is about powerful tools for developers. After all, the modern web isn't just about the experiences provided to end users, it's also about the tools that we developers use to deliver the modern web to our customers. And so while our end users clamor for natural, comfortable, and consistent experiences, we developers are increasingly looking for powerful tools. We want tools that speed up our ability to create reliable cross-device experiences. We want tools that provide everything we need while also playing nice with other libraries that are really important to us. And finally, we want tools that are inexpensive to use but built by world-class developers. Ultimately, we want it all, right? So in the latest release, we've delivered several of these tools, including the Kendo UI Scratchpad, a Chrome DevTools extension, and a Bootstrapper extension for Visual Studio. And the final idea is about openness, specifically an open Kendo UI for all types of apps. Now, after 2 years of working to build the absolute best set of UI widgets and framework features for the JavaScript developer, we figured it was time to give back. So that's why on April 16th, we introduced Kendo UI Core. Now, Telerik Kendo UI Core is, as many of you no doubt know by now, the free and open source version of Kendo UI, which includes 24 of our UI widgets for web, all of the widgets and features formerly available in the commercial-only Kendo UI mobile offering, and all of the framework features in Kendo UI like MVVM, SPA support, the data source, and more. Now, some people may ask, a lot of people have asked us over the course of the last several weeks, why did we create Kendo UI Core? And the truth is that from the beginning, we've published a subset of Kendo UI via a GPL v3 license. And many of our developers were glad to have this option for using Kendo UI, but because the GPL is a restrictive license, meaning that it can legally be only used for non-commercial open source projects, its value to the overall developer community, to you all, has been pretty limited. In addition, the GPL license prevented us from being able to do things like provide access to daily and nightly builds, and also to accept community contributions from interested customers and members of our community. So with the introduction of Kendo UI Core, we hope to change all that. Kendo UI Core is available under the permissive Apache 2 license, which allows developers to use the library in both commercial and non-commercial projects free from restrictions. What's more, because we host Kendo UI Core in a publicly accessible GitHub repository, not only can you get an insight into what we're doing every single day and get access to daily and regular builds, but we're also able to accept Kendo UI Core contributions from you, our fellow mobile and web developers. And we not only want to accept contributions, we encourage those. And we're excited that we're already seeing some of those I'll talk about in just a few minutes. Now, as I've said already, Kendo UI Core is about us, Telerik, giving back. From this point forward, developers everywhere have access to much of the world-class functionality of Kendo UI for free for all of their projects, regardless of type. Now, for those of you already familiar with Telerik Kendo UI, you no doubt noticed that some of our product names have changed in the last month. What we formerly referred to as Kendo UI Web, DataViz, and Mobile has been simplified. And whereas before in Kendo UI Web we had our UI widgets and framework features, DataViz had charts and graphs and our own widgets, things like QR codes and barcodes and things like that. And Mobile had mobile widgets and mobile features. Those are really three discrete packages. And then, of course, we had an offering called Kendo UI Complete, where you could get all of those things together. And then on top of that, we had Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC, JSP, and PHP, which were important for folks working on the server side and really wanting the comfort of working in those environments with Kendo UI moving forward. So what we had today, what we formerly referred to as Web, DataViz, Mobile, and Complete has really been simplified down to Kendo UI Core and Kendo UI Professional. Kendo UI Core includes nearly all of what used to be referred to as Kendo UI Web, plus all of Kendo UI Mobile. Professional, formerly Complete, is now all of Core, all of DataViz, and a handful of our commercial-grade UI widgets like the grid and the scheduler. Now, for customers of Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC, Java, JSP, and PHP, those offerings still have the same features and functionality as before. For apps of all types, Kendo UI Core is the right choice if you're looking for a broad set of UI widgets and professional framework features like MVVM, SPA support, a rich data source, and more. If, on the other hand, you're looking to build enterprise-grade sites with rich charts and graphs, or you need commercial widgets like the grid or the scheduler, Kendo UI Professional is the choice for you. Now, as I mentioned previously, the introduction of a more permissive license under Kendo UI Core necessitated the removal of our GPL distribution of Kendo UI, which we know has affected some of you. So I'd like to take a moment to talk about what this means for our previous GPL users. Now, under our previous GPL license, developers were only permitted to use that distribution of Kendo UI for non-commercial open source apps. Commercial use of Kendo UI was not allowed in this case and required the purchase of a commercial license. Now, the license for Kendo UI Core, on the other hand, is more permissive. It means that you're free to use it for both commercial and non-commercial apps, and you never need to buy a license from us or to use the widgets or features of Core. It's something you can continually use from now until the end of time. Now, Core also includes Kendo UI Mobile, which was previously only available in a commercial license, meaning that you're also free to use Kendo UI Core to build commercial hybrid and mobile web apps to your heart's content. Finally, I want to acknowledge that the introduction of Kendo UI Core and the retirement of the GPL license did result in 4 widgets, the grid, the scheduler, editor, and tree view, being moved into the commercial-only professional license. Now, these 4 widgets, as you can imagine, are quite complex and consume a great deal of engineering time and effort to maintain. So to ensure that these important widgets continue to get the proper attention and focus that they deserve from our full-time engineering team, we've decided to include these widgets in our commercial licenses. And of course, we recognize that licensing, especially open source licensing, can be difficult. So if you're confused by the introduction of Kendo UI Core and what it means for your use of the GPL license version of Kendo UI Web, or you feel as though this new licensing setup has left your project high and dry, I would be happy to talk to you, and I would encourage you to shoot me an email at satram@telerik.com, and we'll see how we can help you out. Now, Kendo UI Core is not just about us. It's about you, which is why we've set up shop in a public GitHub repository, which I encourage you to visit, star, bookmark, and clone immediately after this webcast. And we're excited to finally be able to share Kendo UI with you, and if the results so far are any indication, you all are excited as well. In addition to over 6,000 downloads of Kendo UI Core from Telerik.com, our public GitHub repository has been starred over 700 times and has over 70 forks. We've also had 25,000 unique visitors to GitHub from sites like Hacker News, Reddit, and many, many other more destinations on the web. We're also starting to see a steady stream of issues and pull requests from you. our development community. So to those of you who have already jumped in to contribute, thank you. Now, to share more about Kendo UI Core, especially for those of you new to Telerik Kendo UI, I'd like to call Burke Holland, Product Manager for Kendo UI, to the virtual keynote stage. The floor is yours, Burke.
Thank you, Brandon. Hey everybody, this is Burke. What an exciting day to be able to show you Kendo UI Core, all the different ways that you can get it and work with it. It's going to be great. I'm so glad you're here. All right, first things first, there's been some website restructuring. You may or may not have noticed if you've been with us before that KendoUI.com actually now resolves to www.telerik.com/Kendo-UI, but have no fear, all your URLs still work. You can still get here. So let's get Kendo UI Core as a zip file. Let's go to click on the Try Now button over here on the right. And it'll take us to the Kendo UI Professional Try page. And if we go down a little further, there's a Download Kendo UI Core link. That's what we're looking for. Let's click that. Awesome. And then we need to click on the download link. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if you haven't signed in, it will ask you to sign in. You can use your social account, Twitter or Google or whatever, or your Telerik account if you have one. I've already done it. So I've downloaded it here. Now let's go ahead and check out the package. Probably first things first, let's just extract the contents here. So we'll go ahead and unzip all these files. And then once we've unzipped the files from Kendo UI Core, let's go in and have a look at what's actually in the box. So inside the box, we've got 3 subfolders. The first one here, the JS, is where you're going to find all of the compiled files. Now this is all of the widgets minified, as well as jQuery, and then the kendo.ui.core file, which contains all of the different widgets. Now there's a lot of stuff in here, so if you're just looking for kendo.ui.core, it's the second largest file in the folder, other than its source map file. So the easiest way is just to sort it by size, and it's the second one, and that's the file that you would need along with jQuery. If we go back here, we can look at the source. So we go into the source, you'll see the same thing, but these are the unminified files. So if you want to go in and check out the source code, it's here. Additionally, the kendo.ui.core file is here as well. It's also the largest file. Again, it's the biggest guy in the bunch, but this is perfect for debugging in case you don't want to have to work with minified code, which can be very difficult to debug. Now let's go into the styles folder, and inside the styles folder, we have the common styles and then the web styles. So I'm going to go into the styles folder, and you can see inside the styles folder that all of the different Kendo UI theme styles are here, as well as all of the less files which compile down to the CSS. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how we can use Kendo UI. For those of you who are new to Kendo UI Core, you've never heard of Kendo UI, haven't used it before, I just want to do a simple demo on how Kendo UI works. So I'm going to start a new Sublime text project here, and I'm just going to open the folder that we actually downloaded or extracted, the zip folder. So I'm going to open that. I'm just going to add an index.html file inside of this folder. So this is the Lazy Man's website right here. And really, we're just looking at how to use Kendo UI, so this is fine. Let me go ahead and add some markup to this page here. So we'll create an HTML page, give it an awesome title. This app is going to be amazing. And Kendo UI needs a couple things to run. So let's give it the style sheets that it needs. It's going to need the common style sheet, which all themes need, and then it needs to know what theme you want to use. So in this case, we're just using the default theme, which is that sort of orange and gray theme that you see with Kendo UI. I'm going to go ahead and add in jQuery and Kendo UI Core as well. So there's that kendo.ui.core.min file that we've been looking at. That's the one that contains all of the widgets. This is all of Kendo UI. This is the enormous kitchen sink. So for demonstration purposes, we're just going to look at the whole thing. Now I'm going to create an HTML element to work with here. I tell you what, let me use this select. And inside that select, I want to put a bunch of options. And we'll give each one of those options some text here, and then we'll say, it's 5 of them is probably good. There we go. Now what I want to do is transform this into a drop-down list. And so I'm going to open a script tag, and working with Kendo UI and Kendo UI Core Professional is just like working with jQuery. So you select an item, which you're familiar with doing, so we'll select it by its ID, and then we just call the method for the widget, Kendo dropdown list. And that will give us a dropdown list. There it is. Now that's called imperative initialization. Kendo UI offers a different way to do the same thing using something called declarative initialization, which we can set a data role of dropdown list. And then down in the JavaScript, instead of selecting each element, we can just bind the entire page. And Kendo UI will traverse the HTML looking for the different widgets. Same exact result. Now, usually your data inside something like a drop-down list would not be static. It would be pulled from a server or a data source of some sort, and the Kendo UI has data sources, but it also has an MVVM framework that makes it really easy to work with the data that's in your JavaScript. So let's create a new model here, and models are always Kendo observables. I'm just going to create an array of things. All we're going to do is get the exact same output that we had when we were statically declaring these things before as actual HTML elements, passing the model into the bind statement. And then we'll just tell the select list we want you to bind it. Your source, instead of the static HTML elements, is going to be things. And of course, we get the exact same result here. Now, what's really cool about Kendo UI MVVM is that it's not specific to widgets. It can be used with just straight HTML like this H1 with a title. And then as long as we add a title to our object here, the HTML will be populated with the title from the observable. And that's great because that means that we can just change the title on the observable and we change the title on the page. Now let's take a look at another way to get Kendo UI Core, and that is directly off of GitHub. So if you go to www.github.com/telerik/kendo-ui-core, you will get to the official Kendo UI Core repo. Now this is not only where the source code is, but it's also where the engineering team is out working, so you can actually check the issues list and see what's going on. You can also see here a nice concise table telling you exactly what widgets and features are in Kendo UI Core, which ones are in the professional packages, so there's no questions there. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can click clone in desktop, and what this will do is either ask you to install the GitHub client for Windows or open it if you've already got it installed. Now, I'm a little bit more comfortable on the command line with Git. I'll be honest, I've been using GitHub for 2 years and it still confuses me daily, but I feel a little bit more dangerous on the command line, so let's create a new directory here to start with. I usually put everything in C:dev. I'm going to make a Telerik directory to mimic the repo structure on GitHub, and then let's clone in Kendo UI Core. Now, while this is copying down the repo, let's go down and figure out what the next instruction is, which is to change into that directory. I probably could type this, but why type what you can copy and paste? Let me go ahead and paste this in. All right, and the next instruction is to initialize the less submodule. So we have one submodule in the project, and that's the less submodule, and this command will initialize that for us. Now, while this is working, let's go back, and the last command that we have to run is npm run build. Now, what this does is it actually installs all of the dependencies that we need to build Kendo UI Core, and then it's going to go ahead and build Kendo UI Core for us. Now, when it's all said and done, according to the docs, Kendo UI Core is going to be put into the dist subdirectory. There's also some additional information here talking about how we need to install Grunt. I've already got that installed. And some of the different commands that we can run with Grunt to build Kendo UI. So let's jump back over and see if our build is finished here, and it is. Let me just check my Grunt version, make sure that I've got the appropriate one installed. I do. So at this point, let's take a look at what the npm run build script has built for us. So we have a dist folder now, and here's that minified and the source map files that we see, same as what was in the zip file, and you can see that the core file is in here as well. Now the core file's big, it contains everything, so maybe you may not want everything in your distribution, so you can actually build just what you need. So let's do Grunt. We'll do a build task here, and this would build everything, right? This is the same thing as npm run build. But let me go ahead and exit out of this. I don't want everything. I want to build just what I need. So if I did a Grunt custom task, then I can start listing out the widgets that I want Grunt to build for me. So in this case, we'll do just a drop-down list. So the drop-down list builds here. You'll see that we have a custom file now in the dist folder. So let's open up the dist folder. And there's our custom file. And if we look through the custom file, you'll notice that drop-down list is now, here it is. This is the source code for the widget. But there's no other widgets in here besides the drop-down list. So if I wanted to add in, say, the autocomplete, I can just come and add in the autocomplete to the custom task, and it will rebuild that file, and this time include the autocomplete. So we can do a find this time, and you'll see that the autocomplete is actually there. Now, this isn't the only way to work with Kendo UI. We've also made it available via some of your favorite package managers. So let's take a look at a couple of those. I'm going to fire up Visual Studio 2013, and let's create a new project here. We're all one ASP.NET now, so let's just do that. That's hip. All right, solid. And I'm going to choose the MVC template. Really, I'm just trying to get to the NuGet portion of this. And then we have made Kendo UI Core available as a NuGet package essentially on April 16th, the very day we released Kendo UI Core. So you can come out and search for it, find it, install it, add it to your projects. It's just that easy. NuGet's done a very good job of making package management just great for .NET developers. Now once you install this, you'll find it in your scripts directory under the Kendo folder and then the version number. And then all of the styles will be in the content folder, but the same structure, the content, and then we'll have Kendo under that, and then under Kendo the version. Now we've also got some other cool stuff, some community type things already. Shameless plug here, but you can go to the Visual Studio Gallery, and I've put together a simple spa template for working with Kendo UI, both for Visual Studio 2012 and 2013. So you can just come out and search for Kendo UI Spa. And the SPA framework is built on Kendo UI Core. Now I've already got it installed, so to use it, just fire up Visual Studio and create a new project here. And then we'll choose the MVC4 project. And I don't want to save that. There we go. And we'll just choose Kendo UI Spa. Now what this does is it goes ahead and adds in Bootstrap, Font Awesome, Kendo UI, Require.js, everything you need to build a large single page application using Kendo UI. You can see a nice fade in effect here as the application loads and between the different views. You can see the Font Awesome icons for home and details and the Bootstrap nav bar. It's a very nice integration between Kendo UI and Bootstrap. Now there's no widgets here, but if we wanted to add them, we could come over, and because of the fact that Kendo UI Core is AMD aware, all of its different modules know their dependencies. So in this file, I'm just sort of adding things in as I need them. So if I wanted to add, say, a color picker here, I could just come and reference that color picker from the scripts directory. Now the color picker may have other dependencies, but you don't have to know what those are. Kendo UI is going to go ahead, or Require.js rather, is going to go ahead and load those in for us based on the declarations in the header of those files because they are AMD compatible. Now that we've added this, we can go to the HTML file and again increase this teeny tiny font, and let's just create a div and give it a data role of color picker. There we go. And then we can reload this application here, and you'll see that with those two changes, we're now including the color picker widget, and the color picker widget is being displayed on the home page. So just that easy to work with Kendo UI and Require.js context. Now, not everybody's a Visual Studio user, so for those of you who are not using Visual Studio, we've made it very easy to get your hands on Kendo UI Core using Bower. Now, Bower is the package manager for the web. That's what they call it. It's installed via npm. So I'm just going to create a directory here, and then we'll change into that directory. And then to install Kendo UI Core, all you have to do is Bower, and then install. Let's see if I can type. There we go. Kendo UI Core. And it will go ahead and pull down only the bits that you need to run Kendo UI Core. It doesn't include the build scripts. It doesn't include all of that stuff that's in the repo, only the minified JavaScript and CSS, so that you get just what you need. The source files are included in there as well. But you can see if I list that out, you get jQuery and Kendo UI Core, and you're really ready to create an application. Now, I should point out that we also have Kendo UI Core included in a Yeoman generator that will automatically scaffold an app for you and do a lot of the grunt work that it takes when you're first standing an app up. I encourage you to read through the README on the GitHub site. There's a wealth of information there. Also, instructions on how to contribute. If you read the contributing.readme file that's up here in the repo, it's a goldmine of information. We'd love to see your pull requests. There's a couple of things that we ask before you start. Just knowing the difference between the production and master branches. We want you to use master, how to do a feature branch, how to submit a pull request, and even a few code style guidelines so that we can make sure that the style stays uniform between Kendo UI Core, Professional, and everything else, and everybody's work looks the same. So that's Kendo UI Core. Those are the different ways that you can get it today. All of those are available today to begin to start working with it. We're so excited about Kendo UI Core. We can't wait to see what you build with it and around it. Brandon, back to you.
Thanks, Burke. Great demo as always, man. Now, for those of you who are new to Telerik Kendo UI or Kendo UI Core, hopefully that provided a nice roadmap for getting started with the library. Now, once again, I encourage you to head over to our GitHub repository or to our website to learn more after the webcast. Now let's switch gears and talk about what's new in Kendo UI, both on our open source and our commercial offerings. And as usual, we've added some great new widgets in Kendo UI, including a new drag and drop sortable, notification and masked text box widgets in Kendo UI Core, and a new diagramming control in Kendo UI Professional. We also added a ton of new framework features and other features to existing Kendo UI widgets, from support for real-time data sources like WebSockets and SignalR in the data source, frozen column support for the Kendo UI grid, and finally, decoupling of Kendo UI mobile widgets like the drawer, action sheet, popover, and more. And you'll see those in a few moments. Finally, we've added some great new tools for Kendo UI developers, and I can't wait for you to check them out. For Visual Studio users, we brought several awesome Kendo UI Bootstrapper features into a new Visual Studio extension. To speed up and enrich the runtime debugging experience, we've also added a fantastic DevTools extension to the Chrome Web Store. Finally, we introduced the new Kendo UI Scratchpad and linked it up to all of our online demos, so it's easier than ever to start playing with Kendo UI, even from our own website. To share more of what's new and exciting in both Kendo UI Core and Kendo UI Professional, I'm now going to invite a few more of my colleagues to the virtual stage. First, Ray Bango, Telerik's Director of Developer Relations, will share some more highlights of Kendo UI Core and tools. Then, John Bristow, Principal Developer Advocate, will wrap things up with a look at what's new in Kendo UI Professional. Over to you, Ray.
Thanks, Brandon. Hey guys, this is Ray, and there's a whole lot more goodness to show you. I'm going to walk you through the newest web and mobile widgets we've included in Kendo UI, as well as some new tools to help make prototyping and debugging way easier. They're really slick stuff. Let's glance at our demo page so you can see some of these new widgets, and then I'll show you how easy it is to use them. Let's go ahead and click on the web demos first, and we're going to focus on the three newest widgets, which are the masked text box. And if you've ever wanted to ensure that your users enter information in the proper way, this widget's going to be for you. On the notifications, this is a great widget for letting users know when something happens. They're all the rage. Notifications are everywhere on seems like every application. So now you have a notification widget where you can help your users get more information within your application. And of course, allowing your users to sort information and prioritize stuff is really important. That's where our sortable widget comes in. And I'll show you how to use each one of these in a little bit. On the mobile side, we have a bunch of great new widgets that are going to give you a really good looking, consistent feel across any mobile device for your mobile web apps. So for example, if we open up a drawer, this is a really popular type of UX. And so if you click here, notice it swings out. If we keep going, let's take a look over at the action sheet. The action sheet is really neat because you can expand it out and it gives you additional options. It's kind of like a context menu. So I'll show you how to actually create these. But if you look, we have a ton of new widgets that allow you to really create compelling mobile web apps. So enough of these demos, let's actually dive into the code and actually see how you can build some of these things out. And let's minimize the browser window. All right, so let's start off by showing some of the mobile widgets that we have available. So let me do this. Let me scoot this over so I can bring over my iOS simulator so you can actually see some of the mobile widgets in action. So the first one I want to show you is called an action sheet, and it's actually kind of like a context menu. So the first thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and bring in some actions. And these are the actions that are going to appear in the context menu, giving the user extended functionality. Now, the next thing I need to do is use the Kendo UI mobile action sheet, because I want to actually go ahead and wire up these actions to an action sheet. So if we look here, that's what we're doing. We're creating an instance of the mobile action sheet. We're binding it to the click event of the grid, and then we're going to have some actions that are going to happen when the user clicks. And those actions tie into these, which are callbacks to these individual actions. So if I save this and I refresh here, now when I click on this, boom, we actually have our context menu. So if you notice, it was very easy to set this up. Now, if I go ahead and click on an individual item, notice that the action actually happened on the clicked event, and we got this this information appearing. Very easy to do, and notice that it was styled using the default Kendo UI style sheet, so it looked really great. Let's go on to the next one. The next one is actually a drawer, and the drawers are actually a new UI metaphor that is all the rage, basically. And so what we want is a drawer that will pop up here and give us additional options. So with the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and add the individual drawers that I want to appear. And so I'm going to have 4 different drawer options for showing different information: baseball, golf, swimming, and snowboarding. Also, I want to add a trigger. I want something that's going to actually trigger off the open and close of the drawer. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to create an anchor tag in here. And that anchor tag will be bound later on in some code. So let's scroll down and let's add that code in. All right, let me copy and paste this snippet in so you can see it. And if we look here, so what we're doing is we're creating an instance of the Kendo mobile drawer widget, and then we're going ahead and binding up the triggers so that we can go ahead and show the drawer. We can expand it out. And when we click on an individual item in there, we actually want the data to show up. So now if I go ahead and refresh this, let's take a look. Boom. Now if I click on the trigger, this is the actual trigger right here. Notice it expands out, gives me all the options that we listed. If I click here, the drawer closes out and my new bit of information shows up. So really easy to do, and it gives a nice consistent feel across all your mobile devices. So this is great. So far I've shown you some mobile widgets. Now let's go into more of the traditional web widgets. So let me close this out and let me get rid of this and let me bring back my browser. So I think we've all struggled at some point to ensure that our users enter information in the, not only in the format that we want, but also the data types that we're expecting. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to create a widget that helped developers actually do that, and we call that the mask text box widget. So here we have a phone number field, and notice that in the phone number field I can type in whatever I want. Same with credit card, expiration date, and this is not really what we're looking for. We'd like to have some validation so that phone numbers are numeric. But then when it comes to something like a UK postal code, entering a couple letters is actually fine. So let's take a look at how we can actually make this a little bit better experience. So here's some code. Notice it's standard input fields. Let me go ahead and bring in some examples of how you can use the mask text box widget to actually enhance your code. So notice that what we're doing is we're going ahead and wiring up this widget to the individual input elements, and we're providing a mask. In this case, we're saying we want to have a telephone mask using numbers. Notice that here's an expiration date that I can actually put slash in. I can put hyphens, and in this case I can actually specify letter positions for the actual UK postal code. So now if I go back here and I refresh, let's see what happens. Now when I type in, notice that immediately you have a mask, and if I start putting numbers 333, notice it gets masked and it stops. Now if I go to my credit card field, if I try to put in letters, notice that nothing's happening. But if I type in numbers, boom, it works. And then if I go down here, I can go ahead and try to type in a number in the first one, but it's not going to work because that should be a letter. And I can say here, letter, and it works really nicely. So the cool thing about the mask text box is that it's really easy to implement. You just go ahead and wire up the widget to the individual input field and specify a mask, and there's a bunch of different types of masks that you can actually use. So really easy to use. Let's go on to the next one, which is the Kendo sortables demo. All right, so here we have a playlist, and wouldn't it be nice if we can give our users the ability to kind of sort these tracks in whichever way they want? I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to make our users happy, don't we? All right, very easy to do. Let's go into our editor. Notice that the tracks are simply just list items. So what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of the Kendo sortable widget. And what that does is we wire it up to our list right here, and basically we're going to provide a hint so that way when the user is dragging the entry, they know what's being dragged. And we're also going to put a placeholder in here so they know where to drop it at. And we also want to go ahead and change the cursor around just to look a little bit differently. So if we do this now, let's go back to our demo here. Now let's take a look at this. Now when we do it, notice that we have the hint. That's where it says paper cut, and notice where it says drop here. That's the placeholder. And if you notice, the cursor actually changes. Notice the open hand, and now when we take it, it closes up. Really nice to do, and it changes the position for you. Now I'm going to take this to the next level because when the user drops it, I want to kind of give them a hint of what they've dropped. All right, and we're going to use our notification widget for that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and I want to create a span tag. I just want to drop it here because this is where the notifications are going to be. All right, let me format this a little bit, and then I'm going to wire that up. I want to go ahead and take our notification widget. I'll drop that right in here. Let's take a look at that. All right, and notice it's just Kendo notification. And the last thing I want to do is that when I drop this, I want to actually, I want the notification to kick off. So I'll add it right here, and I'll format this just a little bit better. And on end, what I want to do is I want to actually show the notification and show the actual text of that. So now when I go back here and I'll refresh my screen, when I take this and I'll drop this one right here, boom, notice that we have a notification down here, notification bubble. And the cool thing is that these notifications are user customizable. You can make them really stand out. And notice that if I add more, they just stack each other. So here we're taking advantage of two things. We're taking advantage of Kendo's sortable, and we're also taking advantage of the new notification API. Really cool stuff. And again, the code was really simple to add in, very straightforward stuff. All right, so there's something really cool that I also want to show you now. Is the Kendo UI Dojo, which is basically a complete prototyping tool within the context of your browser. So basically, you can go ahead and type in JavaScript, HTML, CSS in here and actually get immediate results, making testing of your snippets incredibly easy. And notice that by default, the Kendo library is included in there for you along with the style sheet, so you can test all your stuff. So yeah, I can go in here and I can do something like H2 and a hello world. If I can type, and when I go ahead and click on run, notice that I get immediate results. And you know, there's a lot of different keystrokes, shortcuts in here as well. So for example, you can go ahead and press this with control space and you get autocomplete functionality that allows you to take advantage of some of these functions. This includes jQuery and also the Kendo UI API. So I can type that in and get some autocomplete capabilities. And if you are, for example, an Emmet fan, well, the cool thing is that it actually has Emmet capabilities in here as well. So I can go ahead and paste this in and hit tab, and notice that it also goes ahead and takes advantage of that. So lots of cool functionality that's pre-built in here for you to make prototyping very easy. You can go ahead and save the snippet out. You can create milestones. There's a very nice tutorial in here as well on how to leverage it. And you have a bunch of options, including Vim mode. You can go ahead and auto-close brackets, line numbers, just a bunch of different functionalities. One of the things that's really, really cool is the ability to go ahead and choose the type of viewport that you want to hit. So you can create a skin that's going to give you the ability to test for different mobile devices. In fact, if we go in here, all the demos that we provide for you to use actually can now leverage the Kendo UI Dojo. So if I say edit this example, I'll bring this up and I will run it. Notice it comes up. Now I'll reskin this in iOS 7 and notice that I can test it out, and I have the capabilities of checking out to see what it'll look like on a mobile device. Very cool stuff and very neat to use. And so the last thing I want to do is show you our brand new Kendo UI Chrome extension. So if you go here to the Chrome Play Store, you'll see that we have it there. You just go into Google Chrome, install it. It becomes part of the Chrome developer tools, and it's really, really great to make your life easier in terms of debugging Kendo UI based applications. So let's go here. I'll open up another tab and let's bring up the action sheet demo that I did before. Click on that. Notice, remember that it was the one that you click on that, you bring up a context menu. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to see which widgets I'm actually using in this demo? So I'll go ahead and bring up the Chrome developer tools, and notice that I have a Kendo UI option now. If I click into this, I'll see what type of widgets I'm using. Notice that I'm using the sorter because that lets me sort by the columns here. I'm using my grid control, and of course I'm using the action sheet. If I click into the grid control, it gives me a whole bunch of information about the widget itself, and it even tells me, for example, what type of data source I'm using. So it tells me it lets me inspect the actual data that's coming across. I can dive in and look at the events. I can also do other diagnostics. So for example, if I run the Kendo linter, good, awesome, I have no problems with my code. This is great. So that's it for me, guys. Thanks so much for your time. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, John Bristow, who's going to show you a lot more Kendo UI goodness.
Thanks a lot, Ray. Hello, everyone. John here. I'd like to spend the next few minutes highlighting some of the new features found only in Kendo UI Professional, formerly known as Kendo UI Complete. Kendo UI Professional contains all the goodness found in Kendo UI Core and includes widgets that are ideally suited for line of business applications. Let's get started. Kendo UI Web is the collection that most folks know about. It contains 23 widgets for building rich web experiences. Many of you see here, and this list is growing all the time. We have a widget that a lot of folks are familiar with called the Grid. It's a great widget for displaying a lot of data at once, supports operations such as filtering, sorting, paging, etc. And for a long time, we've had an outstanding request to support frozen columns. The idea being, in some cases, you may have content that bleeds over the drawing space, if you will, of the grid itself. And so with this capability, with frozen columns, you can now pin or freeze certain columns, lock them in place effectively, so that you can scroll right to left for those that are unlocked. Let me show you how this works. So you'll notice here I have some content up on my grid, and in certain scenarios, I may want to actually pin certain columns here so that I can scroll the content left to right. So let's go ahead and take an example where my ship country here bleeds over a certain amount of width space, effectively cutting off my ship address. With these two columns locked in place now, I can actually scroll left to right. So I actually have a view within my grid that allows me to scroll content. You'll notice that actually as I scroll up and down, the content stays in sync. This is a wonderful feature that people have been asking for a long time, and I'm happy to announce that we now support it within the grid widget itself. Additionally, you can go ahead and lock columns through the drop-down display here, so I can delegate which columns I wish I have locked and unlocked, etc. Facilitating this feature turns out to be super simple. So in your columns array here, you'll specify whether a column is locked or not, and whether or not it actually supports locking. So 2 Boolean values that you can easily set quickly and easily. Another highly requested feature is the ability to support real-time updates. More and more developers are looking to build in real-time capabilities into their apps, and I'm happy to report that we support SignalR and WebSockets as direct bindings to the Kendo UI grid itself. By way of example, I'll just show you here one example here that we have, which is binding to SignalR. SignalR is a library for .NET developers. It uses WebSockets under the covers if available, and allows you to do real-time updates. As you can see here, we have some content in our grid here that we may wish to modify. Let's go ahead and duplicate this tab, and we'll just pull it off here. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that we can actually see how updates actually propagate from one app to the next. If we go ahead and add a new record to this grid, you can see over on the right hand side that the other grid itself is actually being kept in sync, and this is enabled through SignalR itself. I can scroll over to the right hand side here and actually delete those same records that I just created. And as you can see, as I'm doing those updates or operations, the data that's bound here to the other grid is kept in sync. This is facilitated by the data source, which is a component that many of you are familiar with. Allows you to do data binding, two-way data binding, etc. We have a new feature here, which is for SignalR support. So you specify type equals SignalR. You then give it handlers for various events that may either push or pull data. You wire up what are known as hubs, which is the way that SignalR operates for client-server communication. And once that's all bound and wound up and ready to go, you can go ahead and bind components directly to the data source, in this case the grid, for updates. So what this gives you is the notion of real-time updates for the Kendo UI grid, which turns out to be super useful. We also support WebSockets, obviously, because the underpinning capabilities of this aren't too dissimilar. The way in which you bind this together is a little bit lower level, but if any of you have done WebSockets before, the code isn't terribly hard to understand. We wire up a WebSocket. We then bind the onOpen event for retrieving data. And then from there, we query to say when we're ready, and then add a listener event here for when messages are received. So by receiving events and by receiving updates and utilizing the send operation for WebSockets, we can propagate again updates that occur from widget to widget or widget to server, whatever the case may be. All right, let's switch gears now to Kendo UI DataViz. Kendo UI DataViz is a charting library that contains a number of charts. These are charts that are built using SVG or Canvas. They provide a wide range of functionality. We've added a lot of great capabilities to Kendo UI Professional to these widgets. In particular, starting off with the area and bar charts, we've added support for 100% stacked area graphs now. So this will fill up the entire height of the chart itself. And this also applies to bar charts as well. So you can actually utilize these stacked bars very quickly and easily, which gives you some nice options there. We also support logarithmic axes. So this is in the case where you have a scaled up axis itself. So you can see here, this is something that we also support, which is great. Again, that also applies to area charts as well. So just to show you an example of that, these are where the scaling up factor increases logarithmically as you're using these. This is also supported with line charts as well. So as you're using line charts, for example, remember that some of these features will also flow accordingly. So there's an example of that there. The other updates, of course, include the fact that we also have grouped bars now. So if we go back to the bar charts example, we have group bar support now. And just by way of example, you can see how easy this is to enable. So in the case of stacking, we just simply specify a type of 100%. So it turns out to be incredibly easy to get this supported within these charts. And that's the intention really of DataViz, is really to get out of the way and allow you to draw these beautiful charts and graphs. Recently, we added a new widget called the map widget. This is a great widget that allows you to do binding to backend data sources for GeoJSON and other types as well. We have a number of examples that demonstrate how this operates. In particular, we have this one here, which is showing you the location of the Sydney Opera House. The way in which you'll specify pins on a map is pretty simple. So here's the declaration for the Kendo UI DataViz map itself. As you can see here, we have parameters that allow you to center it on a lat long value, zoom values as well, and then it has this notion of, or rather, an array of layers. So these are layers that allow you to draw onto the map surface itself and specify things like attribution. We can also specify a series of markers as well, which by this indication, this is the Sydney Opera House located in Sydney. So really, really great examples. We also have support, obviously, for creating a series of waypoints or markers through a data source itself. So in this case, we can simply, in the map itself, specify the data source pointing to a JSON location. That JSON file will contain the lat long values for the map itself, and I can go ahead and specify these accordingly. So you can see how that operates there. So really, really great support there within the DataViz product for the map control itself. And it's worth noting that the map is no longer in beta. So previously in our beta, we had a number of mapping and spatial visualization features. This now becomes official. And some of the new features include, as I showed you, the data source binding for markers. And we've got other features as well, like keyboard navigation and much, much more. Finally, I wanted to introduce a new widget that we've added to the Q1 2014 release of Kendo UI Professional, and that's the diagram widget. The diagram widget is an extremely powerful widget. This is a brand new component that provides rich support for Visio-like diagram types, including flowcharts, organizational charts, and more. So these are immensely powerful. They allow you to visualize data in a very rich way. So you can see this is some of the layout capabilities we have within the diagram itself. So you can see you have a number of options there, and we're only getting started. So this is the beta release of the diagram widget available in the Q1 2014 release of Kendo UI Professional. And by way of example, I've written up just some simple examples here that show you some of the things that you can do with the diagram widget itself. So this is an example of JSON formatted entities. These entities actually come from a really nice site that I recently discovered called JSONgenerator.com. This is a really nice site if you haven't seen it before. It allows you to basically templatize your JSON-based data for testing. So on the left-hand side, you provide the formula for the data you wish to test against. On the right, that's the output. You can then either copy that output to the clipboard or the URL. Once you copy that URL, you can then use it in your test. So in this example here, I've just created some dummy JSON, and I've gone ahead and put it into a diagram. So just to show you, this is the structure of that diagram that you saw earlier. So you can see we have our style sheets and our script references. The underlying source for this is pretty simple. So I'm utilizing the data source I'm utilizing in particular the hierarchical data source, and I'm pointing it to that location for that dummy data I created. Inside there, I'm going to list what are my child elements for drawing to the diagram itself. And then once I'm in there, I'll go ahead and bind it to the diagram. So here's the create function for the diagram. You can see here we have our target element, which is the diagram denoted by the class ID diagram. And then from there, we call Kendo diagram. Now in here, we're going to specify the data source, which is that JSON data I created earlier. And then I have a number of options in here. Now, if you look at the docs for the Kendo UI diagram, it's pretty elaborate. So I won't go through explaining all of this, but we have a number of different layouts that we support, which I showed you in the previous example. So in this example, you can see we have a number of different layouts. I'm choosing one called Force, which has some characteristics and heuristics associated with layouts of nodes. And then I can specify a number of what are called shape defaults. And one of the things that's really interesting is we have this support for what are called visual templates. So visual templates are the way in which you construct each individual node. So in this instance here, in the example I showed you earlier, I have each node is represented by a circle and by a piece of text, which is just the ID in that JSON that I showed you earlier. So in this instance, what I'm creating is, first I'm going to create a group, which is a container of shapes. And these are, again, this is the visual template for each node. So I create a shape here called a group, which contains shapes. And then I append first a circle. And then I append a text block, which utilizes data binding here. So data binding is the way in which we can propagate information into the shape itself. And then once we're done, we simply return that as the visual template to the diagram. With all that said and done, we see something that looks like this. Another example might be one where I want to, for example, display a list of repositories for a particular organization. So this is just using the GitHub API for displaying a bunch of repos for the GitHub organization. I can easily change this just by jumping into the code here and changing the target organization from, say, GitHub to Telerik, a simple refresh, and you can see here in a second we have some other repos that are available there. So I'm just using the API from github.com and pulling in that data and then using a visual template here to construct what you saw earlier. So visual templates and the diagram widget, these are new to Kendo UI Professional. They offer some great drawing capabilities. You can create these Visio-like experiences, and going forward should offer you a lot of capabilities for your future app development. Now, unfortunately, I'm out of time. I wish I had more to show you some of the great features we have in Kendo UI Professional, but I would encourage you to download Kendo UI Professional, the latest release. Have a go. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback. Brandon, over to you.
Thanks, John, and thank you, Ray, as well. Those are great. Those are great overviews. Now, you've seen some amazing demos today, so let's just wrap things up with a few final notes. All of the great features contained in Kendo UI Core are, as we've said a few times today, free and open source and available for download at telerik.com or in our GitHub repository. Now, Kendo UI Professional gives you absolutely everything you've seen here today, including our data visualization controls and professional widgets like the grid and scheduler, and world-class support from the Kendo UI engineering team. And if you're working with a server-side technology like ASP.NET MVC, Java JSP, or PHP, we continue to have licenses available for those technologies as well. And of course, if you're already a subscriber to Kendo UI, you've been upgraded with the latest bits. So check those out on our website if you haven't already downloaded those from your account. Now, finally, one thing I also wanted to mention today is that if you're working with Kendo UI Core and you don't need access to the Kendo UI Professional offering, you don't need those widgets or features, but you do want access to that world-class support that Telerik is famous for, you can actually purchase a premium support subscription from us, which grants you access to 10 tickets in our system. And not only that, but this support package is also available for professional subscribers looking for extra tickets than the allotment that comes with that license. And because we want everybody to be a winner, there's a special keynote promo exclusive to those of you who are attending today. So look for this code in your follow-up emails. Don't delete that. Check that out and make sure you use that code, and we hope you'll use it and get the most out of Kendo UI. And as Todd mentioned at the start of our webcast today, the raffle winners for today's keynote will be announced soon. So we'll tweet out those winners, we'll blog about them tomorrow, and follow up with the winners directly in the coming days. So keep your eye on the official Twitter account for Kendo UI at Kendo UI to find out that you won, to stay connected with us, give us your feedback, ask questions, really whatever you want. Please interact with us online. Now, hopefully today's event got you excited about all that Kendo UI has to offer. So really the only thing that's left is for you to go and download Telerik Kendo UI and to start building some awesome stuff. So head on over to telerik.com/kendo-UI, download Kendo UI, tell your friends, tell us what you think. Really just go and build awesome stuff. And thank you for coming and spending an hour with us today. Now with that, we're going to transition to some live Q&A. There's going to be a little bit of a blip as we make that transition, and I'll invite our Q&A host to the stage to help us field questions. And if you have to drop off, thanks again for joining us, and we really can't wait to see what you'll build with Kendo UI.